And welcome to this week's Inside KELO Land. I'm Doug Lund. We start today by looking at Amendment C, which amended the Constitution. It would amend the Constitution to allow and to recognize marriage only between a man and a woman. It would also prohibit the legislature from recognizing civil unions between two people regardless of gender. Now, at the end of July, we asked South Dakota voters how they would decide on the issue. The results of our KELO TV Argus Leader poll show that 49% of people would vote no on a marriage amendment and leave the Constitution as it is. 41% say they'll vote yes to change the Constitution. 10% aren't sure. We're joined by two people on both sides of the issue. Rob Regier with the South Dakota Family Policy Council, and John Hoadley is with South Dakotans Against Discrimination. And Robert, since you're in favor of the change, let's start with you. Convince me as a voter. I think a lot of voters are just not sure what this means. It both deals with marriage between men and a woman, but why is change necessary? We already have a law.
Well, I think what we look at, what's going on around the country, and what this amendment does, and what 20 other states have already done to their amendments on this marriage issue. John here and other gay activists in South Dakota and all around the country have made it very clear what their long-term goal is to marry. Men want to be able to marry men. Women want to be able to marry women. We know that. They have told us that is their plan. And in states where they have tried that, like Massachusetts, they've been successful. In states where they cannot get marriage licenses, they've called it a civil union, like in Vermont, or in California, they call it a domestic partnership. In another state, who knows what they'll create? They'll create some other kind of quasi-marital relationship. This is going around the country. Several states have considered it as an issue. In Montana, they're discussing different marital rights being given to homosexual couples. We need to do this in our state because we know what the long-range plan is. They want to be able to marry people of the same sex. We also know that they've been fairly successful in some states by going through the court system to get their way. And what this amendment would do, even though we have a state law against it, a state law can easily be overturned by just a single judge. And so what this would do is ensure that a future judge would not go off half-cocked and redefine what marriage is. And marriage always has been between one man and one woman, and that's what we're putting into our Constitution.
John, is that the long-term goal of this effort, is to have gay couples eventually have their marriage recognized?
Well, I think the problem is with Amendment C is that we're using these 30-second sound bites and scare tactics to avoid the real issue of a poorly worded amendment. Amendment C would change the Constitution, radically change it, by adding a term called quasi-marital. It's a made-up term that would force judges to decide what laws or benefits have an effect similar to marriage and then deny them to all non-married couples. Now, the impact of this is that, as the Attorney General said, it's going to affect two people regardless of sex, which means that while it's intentionally meant to discriminate against gay couples and send the message that you're not welcome in South Dakota, it also can unintentionally hurt a lot more. People like the senior citizens who live together but they cannot remarry because they'd lose Social Security or pension benefits, they could be deemed to have a quasi-marital relationship. So the legal contracts and the relationships that they establish could be invalidated by a judge. The same thing with just two widows who choose to live together and maybe share expenses and a house and a car after their husbands pass away. They're not in a romantic relationship, but Amendment C writes a blank check to the government to interfere in our personal lives. And as a result, it's going to have a lot larger effect than just talking about marriage.
What's wrong with that?
Well, first, I find it interesting, John, to answer your question, what his goal is. And his goal is to be able to marry another man. That is their long-term goal. We know that's going to happen. They're going to try to make that happen in South Dakota, as they've tried in other states.
What's wrong with that? I guess, if I can play that.
I would love to answer that. Marriage, homosexual marriage, whether you call it marriage or a civil union or domestic partnership or some other similar union, whatever you call it, those kinds of relationships, by definition, create motherless and fatherless families. We've had 30, 40 years of experience of our divorce culture, unwed childbearing, cohabitation, to show us the devastating effects of those things on children. And what we're saying is this type of intentionally denying a child a mother or a father is not only wrong, but it has been proven harmful. You go to the state penitentiary and you can ask every single prisoner in there whether they had a father, and I would guarantee you 9 times out of 10 they had some type of dysfunctional family relationship with their father. We believe it's important that children have both a mother and a father, not just 2 parents, but both a male and a female parent. And that's why homosexual marriage, whether you call it civil union, domestic partnership, or whatever, is harmful to our society.
Is this kind of old-fashioned morality out of date?
Well, no, I think, though, that Rob is intentionally misleading voters on this issue. Because either, like he says, it's just about marriage, or now it's just about marriage and children. And if that's the rationale he wants to take, that children need a mother and a father, which I think is great. The more people that can be involved in loving a child, the better. But the way he's setting up then means that if a widow who loses her husband in the war has children, then that they are somehow not deserving of protections. But more importantly, that's again not what this amendment does, and it obscures the issue, which is why a lot of groups like the United Methodist Church or the Episcopal Church came out against the amendment while at the same time being in favor of marriage between a man and a woman, because they can see that although these ideas of marriage between a man and a woman are distinctly are good for our society or whatnot, they also are saying that this law is so poorly worded and the effects will be so broad-reaching that we need to vote it down. And that's the other funny thing about this amendment. If you vote yes or you vote no, gay people still can't get married in South Dakota. So why take the risk on a bad law? Leave things the way they are and vote no.
We'll continue the conversation on Amendment C after this.